The person who does 90 meetings in 90 days with earnestness could never say that was a waste of my time. No one has ever said that. Ever. There's never been that person who said, okay, I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I connected with people. I shared from my heart. I listened to the fullest capacity. And that was a complete waste of time. Nobody ever said that. What they said was, I feel different than I did. Something has shifted. Why is that? Because we take an action based in a solution, letting go of the old story of what we're not, and starting to build actions and thoughts and tapping into, we call it, in 12-step recovery, we say we tap into a power greater than ourself. Theresa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tommy, for being willing to provide questions around addiction, recovery, and I'm so grateful to be part of this circle right now, and everyone else who's listening too. So my question is, I got sober when I was 18, so I'm a young person in recovery. I've been sober for almost 8 years now on this path of recovery and discovery, and my life is so much bigger, and I'm so blessed in so many ways due to a lot of your teachings, being a part of Recovery 2.0 and, other healing modalities. And my question to you is that for people who maybe have longer term recovery, have been on this path and journey for years, for me personally, sometimes I still wake up with anxiety, with grief, with sadness. And, I have a lot of separation from the dis-ease, but it's still I feel like it's always there. It's always in the corner, in its own way. And I'm wondering, do you believe that we can completely, get beyond sort of this addiction and reach that place of peace and contentment? Or is it sort of maybe an acceptance of the human condition? This is what it is, and there's beauty in that. Or are there different things that people maybe, if they have longer term recovery, keep hitting those obstacles and those bumps that can do to sort of elevate more peace and freedom?
Wow. Thank you for this inquiry. I'm so excited that you asked and that we can share on this core question. I say it's a core question because I truly believe that it's actually a question that every human being has, whether they find themselves in recovery or in discovery, as we describe ourselves. Wherever they are in their path, everybody's basically asking this question: how can I find peace? Is there such a thing in the human condition? I wake up with anxiety, depression, stress, worry, fear. Is there a way beyond these things? Like all people, we struggle with attachment, pride, anger, lust. Is there a way beyond these things? These are the age-old questions. This question, this inquiry, lays at the heart of the human effort. And so thank you so much for voicing it the way that you did. Every thought leaves an impression in the being, the mind-body system. So thought comes, subtle impression is left behind. To repeat a thought, to focus one's thought over and over and over again on whatever it is, leaves deeper and deeper and deeper impressions, layers of impression, one on top of the next, one on top of the next, one on top of the next. Eventually, those impressions become habits. So the thoughts which left an impression create the need or compel us to act. So there's a thought, and then there's an action. The action also leaves an impression in the being. So in concrete terms, let's just use a metaphor of the chocolate cake. So I'm thinking about the chocolate cake, thought, impression. I'm thinking about, I've decided that that thought is kind of interesting to me and enticing to me. I think I'm going to build upon that thought. I'm now going to think about the icing on that chocolate cake. I'm going to think about, and I'm going to draw upon my memory now, because these impressions are already here. And I'm going to think about that little, ever so slight crunch that happens when I crunch through the icing into the soft cake of the chocolate cake. I'm going to think about the fact that it was my grandmother that used to give me that chocolate cake and how much love I felt from her and sweetness. And the chocolate cake was not only sweet because it had sugar in it, but because it was associated with love coming from my grandmother. Impression, 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 impression. All of those thoughts leave an impression, a subtle impression behind. Eventually, I think about that so much, I'm like, ooh, I think I will go have a piece of chocolate cake. And I go and I have a piece of chocolate cake. I go out to the store, I take an action, I leave my home, I go down to the store, I buy chocolate cake and I eat it. Yummy. And I eat this chocolate cake. And I have the experience of eating that chocolate cake. I've now taken an action that leaves an impression, a deeper impression than just those thoughts. And having had that chocolate cake, I feel whatever the feeling is that comes with me having eaten that, the satisfaction, the immediate satisfaction of the craving of thinking about the chocolate cake. And I also feel whatever goes along with that. For some people, that might be feeling sluggish or drowsy or tired, or they realize, wow, that really wasn't good for me. That wasn't the right choice for me. You know, other people might say, wow, that was so yummy. How great. I'm going to play soccer now. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to run, whatever, like it's okay. Whatever the collection of feelings or consequences was. All of these things are impressions, 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 impressions. Piling on top of each other over and over and over again. A thought that leads to an action, that leads to more thinking about the action that was taken, that leads to more actions. And what I'm describing to you, hopefully in relatively clear terms, is the concept of karma. This is our karma. People make a big deal out of karma, like, oh, you did something bad and now you're going to pay for it. Or you did something good and you're going to be rewarded. And that's not exactly how karma works. That's a very rudimentary understanding of karma. Karma is this wheel of thought, impression, which leads to action, which leads to more thought. And we know that when this wheel gets going, we have a word for what happens. The word is habit. We're building a habit. In my own life, unconsciously, I was dealing with anxiety as a child and through my adolescence and into my 20s, even into my 30s. And when I started to really awaken and learn how to break the habit, I didn't realize where this was coming from. Looking back, I could say my anxiety, I could attribute to insecurity that I felt as a child with what was happening in my house. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of emotion, a lot of struggle, a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, a lot of blame, and a lot of complaint, and a difficult environment to be in. But if you asked me then, hey, something seems to be bothering you, what's up? I would not be able to answer. I would not be able to tell you what was wrong, but something felt wrong. That's how I define anxiety. Anxiety is something's wrong. I'm not sure what it is. There's just a nagging feeling that something is not right in the world. There's a glitch in the matrix. And I don't exactly know what it is. I have an itch that I want to scratch, but I don't seem to be able to get deep enough to scratch it. I now understand through self-inquiry and study of yoga and the practice of meditation that I had built a habit. I had built the habit of anxiety in response to what I was experiencing in the world. And that as an adult, my work in the world was going to be to break that habit, to break out of thought that leads to more thought, that compels me into action, action that leads to even more thinking, and that keeps me on this wheel of karma, the karma of being an anxious person. I have known people who came up in a very, very painful and difficult home situation. Some of those people have suffered terribly in their entire life. And they look back at that and they say, those were the things that happened to me. And I know other people that have been in equally horrendous family situations, difficult situations growing up. And for some collection of reasons, they were able to transcend the fate of being negatively affected by those things for the rest of their entire life. They broke out of the habit. How does somebody break the habit of anxiety, break the habit of depression? How does somebody break the habit of anger or jealousy or rage or sadness or loneliness or addiction? In a way, we could look at all of these things as a kind of thought addiction. We're stuck in our karma. We've been thinking a certain kind of way, consciously or unconsciously, and it piles up on us. Layer after layer after layer, billions upon billions and trillions of thoughts over a lifetime. You are a young woman. If my math is not incorrect, you're somewhere in your mid-20s. So in, let's say, 25 years, in a quarter century, you've built up trillions and trillions and trillions of impressions, thoughts which came in reaction to environment or something you felt inside. Emotions came, actions came out of those thoughts and emotions. More thoughts and emotions came up. And until one became conscious, one might think they were at the mercy of everything around them, which is simply to say, I feel like I'm a victim of circumstance. The circumstances of the external world, as I understand them, are painful for me. And until the circumstances in the external world change, I will not be able to break out of this habit of feeling this way. So yoga or recovery, I consider them to be pretty much the same thing at this point. Yoga and recovery is the process by which we break these patterns. We break these thought patterns. We break these habits. One of the reasons that you ask this question, and that this question is so important to ask and to explore, is because so few people have found the answer to this question. And the people who have found the answer to this question, many of them are shouting from the rooftops, like, hey, there's a way. There's a way to rise above the challenges of our childhood. There's a way to heal our trauma. There's a way to move beyond our addictions. And we have to do it through the cultivation of our awareness and consciousness, through meditative practices, through yoga, through the arts that help a person to learn how to relate to their mind. We have to cleanse the subconscious. We have to work this out so that we're not stuck in the same karma for the rest of our existence. Becoming a person who's awake simply means I'm more aware than I used to be of what I'm actually thinking, of what is actually working on me. I am no longer blindly subject, being led around by my subconscious thought process. I have brought those thoughts into the light of day so I can examine them, so I can work with them. We talk about yoga being a path from dark to light, or recovery being a path from dark to light. We say the darkness of addiction into the light of recovery. What that means is we are starting to investigate the forces which drive us in our thoughts and our behavior that move us in a certain direction. Until we wake up to this thought process, which is what's driving us, we will feel like a victim of circumstances. We will feel that we're at the mercy of the world, of people, of places, of situations around us. We will wake up with anxiety, with fear, with worry, because we're still in the habit of that. We haven't completely, fully worked out our karma. We haven't fully finished the unfinished business of the impressions left by the pattern by which we think. So the mind is the problem, and the mind is the solution at the same time. In yoga, in recovery, in this process, in life, in the movement to the light, more consciousness, more awareness, we are training our mind in a new way. So I will say to people, you have trained yourself into addiction. Now, in this day and age, a lot of people don't like to hear that. For some, that will, in a philosophical way, that will go against the idea that some people don't think that's a very compassionate thing to say, that you have trained yourself into addiction. It seems to place the blame upon a person or the responsibility when in many cases, people say, well, I was traumatized. These terrible things happened to me. And that may be very legitimate. People have been traumatized and people have done terrible things to people. And unfortunate things have happened to people. What we recognize is that we must see that and understand what took place, while at the same time moving to process and free ourselves from that. Otherwise, what took place in the way past could be with us for a lifetime. And we would not wish that on anybody. And I recognize, as a person in recovery and as a teacher in recovery, that if a person doesn't see and begin to take responsibility for what they're experiencing today and now, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to heal from whatever took place, for them to come fully present, for them to be able to release in an appropriate and a healthy way, to release the past, to work out their karma, to begin to get onto a new pathway, if you will. For me, in my journey today, in my effort today, I notice there are periods of time where I could find myself off center and wake up with some anxiety or fear. And so there's a couple ways I can go with that. I could say, wow, Tommy, I can't believe after all this time, you're still vulnerable to this. Wow. And I could build a story around this emotion. That's what we call pulling the second arrow. The first arrow is the emotion itself. I feel anxious this morning. Well, that's just something to recognize, really. There's no story about it. I feel anxious this morning allows me to see something that is, and then to take an appropriate action to change that. The second arrow is I feel anxious. And you know what? I really shouldn't. I shouldn't be anxious. I should be beyond that. Wow, what kind of teacher am I? Wow, what kind of person am I? Ooh, I can't believe I'm vulnerable to these emotions at this point in the game. With that story attached to the reality of anxiety, I've pulled the second arrow, and I am now powerless to do much about it. I'm back in I'm a victim of circumstances. I'm angry, I'm bitter, I'm disappointed, I don't feel good about myself, and that can spiral into just a really bad day. So I recommend, and I choose by practice, I choose to change my emotional state, which I've learned to do, which anyone can learn to do through breath work and through yoga and through meditation, through walks in nature, through eating really healthy food, through talking it out with friends who understand that I love, or sitting in a circle like we are right now, elevates me. And I find that I'm no longer anxious. It's very, very important that I catch myself before I pull that second arrow and make a story about the fact that I feel a certain way. I'm just a human being. The good news is that I'm a human being now with some skill and some ability and some teachings and some guides and teachers who have shown me what to do when we are subject to this kind of thing, which is the subject of your inquiry. So the question was, do I believe there's a way beyond these kinds of addictions of waking up in these habits? I believe it's a process. I believe that there's nothing wrong with waking up with, an anxiety here or there. I believe that it's not skillful to build a story about that, but I believe the skill is taking an action that will change the way that you feel and move you forward into a greater state of awareness and presence with what is actually true. Of course, the anxiety and the trauma and the thing that happened and the way they treated me and the circumstances that happened. And if you only knew what happened to me, then you would finally understand why it's okay for me to be miserable. That whole dialogue falls away because it's not true. People will say, are you trying to tell me my trauma is not true? I'm trying to tell you that the experience which has taken place, which created that chemical trauma within your body, no longer exists. But the chemistry and the memory still do. Those can be processed and worked with, and those can be healed and then ultimately transcended, no matter what, by anybody. We know this. So we don't want to stay stuck in that thought of my this, my that, my sickness, my mental health, my family, my liabilities. We want to move into solutions. Okay, I have this challenge. How might I move forward towards a solution to this challenge? What would it be like if I woke up with this anxiety and I got down onto a yoga mat and I did 3 minutes of breath work? Let me have that experience. Let me try that. What would it be like if I did that every day for 40 days or 90 days? It's like a person waking up on day one of their recovery from addiction and saying, would it be a good idea for me to go to a meeting today? What would happen there? I notice I don't really want to go to a meeting today. I'd rather just be alone with my miserable self. But then they go to a meeting, they take an action, and now that new action forms new impressions in a whole different direction. And that what's being trained into a person is, I notice when I overcome my resistance to doing positive things for me, that good things happen in my life. I think I'll do more of that. And we begin to move down a road towards healing and health. And we will find after a certain amount of time of steadiness and practice, like if you went to 90 meetings in 90 days, the person who does 90 meetings in 90 days with earnestness could never say that was a waste of my time. No one has ever said that. Ever. There's never been that person who said, okay, I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I connected with people. I shared from my heart. I listened to the fullest capacity. And that was a complete waste of time. Nobody ever said that. What they said was, I feel different than I did. Something has shifted. Why is that? Because we take an action based in a solution, releasing old story, letting go of the old story of what we're not, and starting to build actions and thoughts and tapping into, we call it, in 12-step recovery, we say we tap into a power greater than ourself. That could mean God for somebody or spirit or great, whatever it is. But it really just means you released old stories and you were able to adopt new ones, which brought new energy into your life, new momentum. And after a short period of time, relatively, you changed. Now, you already expressed that you've had major changes in your life. And so you're knocking at the door of this next level. Now, one thing I notice, like we're all on social media and I happen to know you and I see you in the gym and I see you rocking it and crushing it in that gym. I see that it's meaningful to you. I see that it brings something positive to you. And so all you have to do, your job, is to enjoy all those things without looking for the outcome that those things might produce. In other words, we go to the gym. Often we go to the gym for something. Well, I'll go to the gym, but my body better look this way in 30 days, or I want to bench this much in this amount of time. And very few people go to the gym or live their life just for the joy of what they're doing. This can be part of our anxiety structure, is that we are in the habit of doing things for the hope or the possibility that they will lead to something else, at which point we can then relax. Can we break out of that habit and start to do things purely because they're joyful? Yes, we can do that. And that's a quantum leap. That's a quantum shift in if-then thinking, or, this has to happen and then X, Y, and Z can take place in my life. What if we went to the gym because it just felt amazing today? Oh my God, this was so fun. Now, I'm not saying that you're not doing that. We haven't had this discussion. But I know that for me, the movement from anxiety to presence had a lot to do with the mental setup for my engagement in certain activities. And my effort has been about moving towards greater and greater joy in the decisions that I'm making. Joy now. And yes, I do have to do certain things in my life that I resist. I come up against my own resistance when I wake up in the morning to do a practice. Or when I go to the gym, I still come up against my own resistance. But when I get to the gym, I start to really just enjoy that. And sure, I love to have a strong, capable body, just like anybody else. And I know that the gym, it contributes to that. I just want to remember that if I take a 30-day commitment to go to the gym, I really want to enjoy the first 29 days. I don't want to just enjoy the possibility that I did something for 30 days. I really want to enjoy the whole thing and to ease up on myself and ease up on my throttle a little bit and investigate the depression. With depression, what am I not expressing? What am I suppressing? What am I repressing? Which makes me feel depressed? What needs to come out of me? What's the song I want to sing? How do I need to be in this world so that I don't go through this life heavy? And anxiety, it's such a training. It's a mental training. I trained myself into anxiety. And now my day-to-day effort is to train myself out of it. And I know through the practice of yoga and meditation and breath work that anybody can do that. And when you add music, sound, vibration, singing, and dancing, art, nature, when you add all of these incredibly beautiful things into it, then we can find ourselves truly healed, truly joyful. And we'll put together a string of days where we'll wake up, like after a string of days, we'll wake up and we'll be like, oh, I'm not anxious. I don't have to prove anything anymore. I don't have to be anything other than just me. What was it that was wrong? And it will be very difficult from that place of being healed to relate to yourself as the person you once were. Like, I no longer understand, like, what was I so bent out of shape for when actually everything was okay? Well, I had to break out of my patterns. I had trained myself to be and to think a certain way, and it had a consequence on me. And I got to wake up, and it happened for me. And now life happens for me rather than happens to me. And that's a quantum leap. And then life will happen through me. And then you're just blessed. Now you're just, in the employment of powers greater than ourselves. So that's a good place to end this exploration. I'd like to ask if something comes up for you or anything further you wanted to say in relation to what we just explored.
Wow. First, just wow, that answer was absolutely just, opened up so much for me. I think the follow-up question, you talk about joy, and I think you are 100% right. Like how we are relating to the things we're doing, whether that's practice, gym, is really everything. And so just from my own observation of, people, friends that are on this path of recovery and discovery, how do you help someone sort of claim their worthiness and that they deserve joy? Because I feel like a lot of people like me struggle with these types of things because I think that I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of joy. I'm not worthy of these certain things, which then creates that habitual loop. So how would you, or what feedback or advice would you give someone who maybe is like, that all sounds great, but like, I just don't feel deserving of that, or that's even a possibility for me to get there?
The way my teacher, Guru Prem, put it to me, he said, if you give energy to the fantasy of your shame, it will take you to places you don't want to go. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. Shame is this sense that there's something wrong with me. Not that I've done something wrong, that's more guilt, but that there's actually something wrong with me. I'm wrong. I'm off. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. So that's all in the realm of shame. It's a fantasy, is what my teacher is telling me. What does he mean by that? I actually, back in the day, I actually feel these feelings. How can you tell me this is a fantasy? It's a fantasy because it's not based in truth. Your shame comes as the result of misunderstanding. For if you really understood what and who you are, you could not possibly be ashamed. It also is a learned behavior. It's a habit. And when people are shame-based, they're the most challenging people to work with on a path of recovery, because until they break out of that pattern, there's always that default of, well, I'm just not good enough. I'm just not good enough. So how do we do it? In very practical terms, we need something to help us. The way it worked for me, I needed three things. First of all, I needed to start to feel better about myself. I just needed to start to feel better about myself. How do you do it? You do it one action at a time. You begin to do things that make you feel better about yourself, little by little. So the old saying is, if you have, how can you build self-esteem? You build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts. You do little things, the tiniest of things, from smiling at somebody when they need to see a smile, holding a door for somebody, being kind to somebody, compassionate with somebody. Treat yourself well with a beautiful smoothie or a drink of juice. That's kindness to yourself. Little tiny things lead to consistency with doing those things, and you start to feel better about yourself. That's one thing. Looking for ways to be of service, either to myself in a really, really compassionate way, and also to others. Second, I have to put myself around other people who are not in that same frequency. We'll call it a frequency, the frequency of shame. We turn the radio channel. Oh, well, welcome to the shame channel. Here at the shame channel, we are exposed to an incredible amount of negative thinking over and over and over again. We're going to really feel crappy about ourselves today here at the shame channel, and we're going to have to figure out a way to change that channel. One of the ways is to get around other people who carry a higher vibration than shame, like love, like presence, like awareness, like humility, like kindness, like compassion, like connection, all of these things. So we want to start to get with a new group of people who are living in this solution to the human condition. So often what happens is that frequency of shame attracts a like frequency. And we're around other people that resonate with that or who make us feel ashamed. Often people who are ashamed of themselves or in shame, they place themselves into situations where they can reinforce the fact that they should be ashamed of themselves because they put themselves around people who treat them poorly. The next piece of this is that by putting yourself around people who see your inherent value, who treat you like a human being, you start to feel energy come in. And the direct experience I've had of this, I got around some teachers in my life that just made me feel welcome. They were not saying, wow, you're broken. Wow, you're going to really have to figure shit out, and then maybe we can hang out. That was not the vibe. The vibe was amazing that you're here. We need your help. Like, let's practice together. Let's grow together. Let's address some problems together. Let's look at it, and like, that was like being recognized and seen by people as a contributing member of like society. That felt good. That felt so good. And so I put myself around those people in those situations, and I did everything I could do to start to serve, get out of my own head, break out of my own stuff, and to show up for life, show up for me also in my own healing, my own recovery. And it's a process. I wish I could tell you I had the thing that I'm about to suggest. That would be really great if you had. Anybody who's watching or listening to this. I cannot say that I'm the most patient person. I cannot say I've been the most patient person. I can simply tell you that I have been impatiently learning since I ever found recovery. But if I could suggest patience as a strategy, I would. It's all coming. If you do the work, if you are honest with yourself, if you get around other people working to be more and more honest and to live the best version of their life, if you get around those people, if you lean into nature and you lean into humility, if you admit when you make a mistake and try to do better, you cannot fail in this life. You cannot fail in this life. And this is a path of discovery, as you called it, and as we like to call it, a path of discovery, Recovery 2.0. It's available to anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I highly recommend it, because with patience, you'll find that you'll get where you need to go. And once you get where you need to go, you'll realize you're just here. And that you're just on this never-ending evolutionary path, and it's perfect. And it's difficult to be human sometimes, and that's okay too. So can we overcome the human condition? No. We can just be more human, and we can become more skillful, and we can develop ourselves into awake, whole, united people, integrated. The past becomes part of who you are today, not something you run from, but it becomes something that you are informed by. It no longer haunts you. It doesn't have the charge it used to. You're informed by that. The future is something that you can't even guess at, because to even try to guess would be selling yourself short. The present moment, where it's at, this moment we've all decided to be in together, spontaneous and creative. We don't know what's coming next. And that's scary, because we don't know what's coming next. It's being in the present moment is like being in the unknown. It's part of the reason we don't want to be in the present moment. We want to predict and control and manipulate. But when we let go and we have that surrender, we find ourselves here in the present moment, and the most extraordinary things take place. So yes, we can be excellent at being human and imperfect. And we can also have God-like aspects of our character as well. And all of that goes together in this one messy but beautiful existence. So thank you, Theresa, so much for your beautiful inquiry. I'm so grateful that you are sitting with us in circle today.
Thank you so much for your answer.